Hey guys, Chip here. So the purpose of this video will be to introduce an update to one of our existing products, as there have been lots of changes, and one of them is the name. Let me explain. The product I'm talking about is the Eevee material system, and when it was first created, the speed differences between rendering with Eevee versus Cycles was substantial. This new product, renamed Eevee plus Cycles Materials, as the name says, now includes Cycles. And like many of you, I'm now rendering more in Cycles than ever before. In fact, I rarely render in Eevee anymore. So that means I had to adjust all of the materials so they would work in Cycles as well. Not to mention, I've doubled the number of materials and created some pretty amazing ones for specific uses that I want to share with you. And of course, this is a free upgrade for existing users. As before, there still is a strong emphasis on creating both photorealistic and memory-efficient materials. Most of you know that I prefer photographic textures versus procedural ones, though I do use procedural techniques where necessary. One of the great things about Eevee plus Cycles and its predecessor is the fact it works seamlessly with both the free and pro versions of KitOps. This means you don't have to download another specific add-on just for materials. And if you haven't seen my video on why I prefer KitOps over Blender's own asset manager for materials, then you should check it out here. There are many important and memory-saving features in KitOps, not to mention all of the cool modeling features as well. Some of the new materials include a universal glass material that works great in both Eevee and Cycles, and some amazing paneling materials that use both images and procedures to create fantastic worn steel-plated material effects with just a click of a single button. And we also have a great new Tri-Planar material that allows you to do lots of amazing things like rotating raster textures on your objects easily. And we share our decal material that also has a grunge slider, so you can easily add worn edges to your decals procedurally. And there's a new Hologram material and lots of others, including some really cool tech LED decals. And of course, there are the same existing metal, plastic, concrete, high-tech, and other legacy materials, and they have all been optimized for Cycles as well. So let's go ahead and get started and take a look at some of these great materials. Okay, before we get started, let's use a little KitOps design magic, and we're going to create kind of a little sci-fi box. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of adjust this to some kind of proportions that I kind of like. And let's go into some of the modifiers that come with KitOps Pro. And I'm going to just grab, let's just grab something like this. And I'm going to add the insert here, and I hit the F key to go on a face and just scale it up. Something like that. And then let's turn off face orientation. And because we're using KitOps Pro, we have this mirror Z, so we'll hit that on there. Maybe move this up just a little bit, maybe a little more. Yeah, something like that. Scale it out a little bit. Cuts off. So let's take a look and see. So this is kind of our shape that we're working with. And then, let's add some things on the side. Let's put maybe something like this on the side. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to create something that's going to be able to show some of the different materials as we're adding them. So with this object selected, I'll add this insert here, and I'll scale it down. Actually, let's see what happens. Yeah, let's leave it like that. And then again, that's the X direction. So we'll just do this, and we have it on the X direction. And then let's go over to some of these widgets. At any point, by the way, I can just come in here and say, convert this whole thing to a mesh and then remove the unused wires. So that works. And let's add this insert on top of here. Hit the F button. Actually, that's not going to, that's snapping to a face. So let's right click on it and say KitOps, relocate insert, and let's hit V for vertex. That'll do that. And I'll scroll the mouse wheel just to kind of move it down just a little bit like that. And then maybe we'll put a handle over here. Let's see if I can find a handle. Here's a handle. I'll stick it on the side here. Something like, hold the Alt key, rotate it around. Maybe we'll move it up to here, something like this. So you can see that. And again, that's on the Y, so I'll mirror that on the Y. So now we have something that's, take a look at this in rendered view. We have something that looks like this. Let's go to our HDRI view. You can kind of see what we're looking at, right? And that's kind of one of the things that, what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about how this stuff renders inside of Cycles. And so I want to create this, basically create this object. And by the way, this texture on the ground, that's part of the new Eevee plus Cycles material system as well. Okay, so let's go through a quick review of all these Material KPACKS. So as we mentioned before, we use KitOps Free or KitOps Pro to apply them, and it's extremely simple. You just select an object and you navigate to whatever material you want to, and you can just basically at that point apply it. And so we're going to start with this CW Advanced Dirty. These are kind of some of the hero materials, some of the more featured ones. And let me just show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to add this material to this object. And as you can see, it kind of comes in as it's a dirty paint material, and it does a pretty good job in Eevee. And of course, we go to Cycles, we also get this nice beveled edge also on it. And if we look at our nodes, you'll see that it's very complicated. It might be overly intimidating, but the simple fact is all you need to do is you adjust this material just using the yellow nodes. So these ones right here, this adjusts the color of the paint, so as you can see, if I just choose a different color, it'll move it around and, whatever color I choose. And then we have this dirty node, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in detail. But this dirty node group is something we can add to any material, and it gives us this nice grunge with dirt coming, height adjustable dirt, all kinds of stuff. And it's got, different, you can adjust the width of the edges on these things. And it actually has two different material outputs, one for Cycles and one for Eevee, so it's trying to match them as accurately as possible. And so let's just keep on going. The dirty one, we've got that. We've got this panels one, which is really cool, and you can use this, and most of these are set up pretty much exactly as you want when you just click them. There's a way to adjust them as well inside of here. Like here we have the scale of the panels. You can adjust those. You can do stuff like that. But for the most part, it's pretty well set up the way you want them. And they just work right out of the gate. And this is just a great kind of a sci-fi thing. And then you've got this worn steel, which is kind of like the panels one, but it doesn't really have, any of the panels, of course. And then we have the super dirty. And the super dirty is kind of a special one because what it does is it comes with a, it's just this node group, right? And in it, you can adjust all kinds of stuff like, the scale of the dirt, the strength, the brightness and contrast. You can adjust the height settings and roughness and brightness and bump and all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to get into details how you do all that, but we're not going to do that right now. I just want to kind of give you an overview of what we've got. We have over 480 materials now in the different KPACKS. So let's just keep moving down. So CW Bevel is for use if you have KitOps Bevel. Those are some of the materials you use for that. Camo is, you've got all these different camouflage materials, and you can add those. And keep in mind that you don't need to UV map anything here, right? These all work without UV mapping, right? And they also all work inside of Cycles as well. And don't forget, there's a bevel node in here so that you can actually adjust these in Cycles. That's the camo. We've got car paints. Car paints are pretty cool, like this blue flake. Add that material. So it's got, some pretty interesting ways to affect it. Also, you just look in this flake and you can adjust the scale of the flake, make it bigger or make it smaller. There, it's a little larger, 200. And you can adjust even the density as well. Just like anything else, you can adjust the color. And you've got this iridescent one, which is kind of a neat one because you actually have two colors that you can work with on that one. So that's kind of neat for the car paint. Concrete, as I mentioned, this one down here, this concrete floor is this dark one right here. But there's also, you've got different types of concrete as well that you can use. And they use the one texture to rule all technique, and we can go over that again. I've already got a tutorial on it, but I'll probably go over that one more time because we did make some changes to it, and we've added a bevel node as well as fixed some of the nodes in the settings, so it works perfectly inside of Cycles, and it also is very, very memory efficient. Look at our VRAM is staying down low, and we have all these materials in the scene. Okay, let's go down to decals. Now, decals is kind of interesting. Actually, let's take this and let's just turn this back to. These decals are interesting because when you add them, you don't add them as a material. You add them as an insert. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to scroll here and click here and just set it down like up here. And as you see, when we zoom in, you'll see that this is Cycles and this is Eevee, and they work great, right? And there's a whole video, and I'm going to put link to it in the description, which tells you how to add your own decals. And in fact, if you look in this material, the video will tell you right here. You go to that, and that's a video that'll show you how to add your own decals. The other thing that's really cool about this is that you can go in here and see this amount. You can just adjust this, and you can basically, erode the edges of the decal as well. So you can make it, if we have this as a, let's say this is the worn steel one, we can add this to match kind of that burned out look there. And I can just adjust this any way I want to. And of course, again, once it renders in Eevee, and it will also render in cycles just as easily. The other thing that you can do with decals is you can also make them emissions, right? So I can just swap that out. Now it's a glowing decal. And so if I go into my, light settings, and let's go to world and turn this off. Let's just scene lights, scene world. And let's turn the gaffer back on. So you can see now it's glowing, right? So that's kind of cool. And you can adjust the glow, of course, right here. So there's an emission setting. And then if you want to just change the overall color of it, you can just come in here and just pick a color and then just add that to the color, and that'll change it as well. And you can do that whether it's emissive or if it's just the BSDF one. Either way, it'll work well. And the other thing to mention is that if we right click and say relocate this insert, and let's put it like right there, and I can come over here in this object and I can hit this shrink wrap, right? So I can, right now it's turned on. Let's put the subdivision on and we'll turn on the shrink wrap. Let's turn these both on. And with it set like that, I just need to basically say, what is my target? So I click on this and click on here, and it's going to wrap itself nicely right around that. And if I hit the Q button and look at my wireframe, you'll see, you see that these faces are matching. If I want to, I can just add a little more detail here if I need to, but that works pretty good too. So anyway, that's one of the key things about these decals, is you can do a lot with this different object. Let's keep moving down the displace one. This is something that I used with a tutorial for spaceships, and these are some displacement textures, and they're really kind of specialized for those tutorials. I'll put a link for those tutorials in the description. Emissive is an interesting one. I can basically take a lot of these different again, these are objects more than they are materials, but if I want to, I can add an insert, over here, scroll it down, rotate it, and just move it to where I want it to be. And it'll just sit in there. And then of course I look at this insert material, right? It's pretty straightforward. We just, we've got this image here. Here's the image. You can tab into it, change the different image. This is using Simple Sci-Fi to create these. And then the LEDs, you can scale them if you want, make them bigger. You can move the X lock and the Y lock around, to get something else that you may want, and adjust the strength, of course, and then there's ones that are not quite as busy. So if you want to take another one and just say add insert and put it somewhere, and let's put it like down here, and hit the S button, scale it down, and we can see it. So, get the idea. That's one thing that's in here. Another thing that's in here are these other objects, which are these softbox emit. So these are all objects in this. So yes, if you can use these as kind of lights. They're really good for doing reflectivity kind of tests. Like if I come in here and let's just go into KitOps, I'm gonna grab from the free KO special mats. There's one called Glossy Display, and I'll add that material to that. So you can see that we can, this thing will give us reflections, nice reflections, and I use it a lot for creating the special kind of reflections in displays. The other thing in the emissive are these gobo lights. There's a spot in the area. These only work in cycles, and again, you just click in here, and I've got a video on how this works as well, but primarily you just have the scale feature right here, so you just use this to scale in whatever it is that you want. Okay, that's emissive. Glass. Kind of the key thing with glass is I would always start with this CW glass universe, and that's going to give you kind of the best, the best looking glass. It's got a little tint, has one for Eevee, one for cycles. It works in Eevee, as I mentioned, but I want you to see how the transparency of these two glasses, and you can see you can see through it. Now, if I come into this one, just this one, I'm going to say new. Let's give it a new, and let's X shift shader. We're going to add just a regular glass shader, and we're going to set that up. So look at the difference in the shadows between these two, right? So this one, you could actually see the light coming through. This one, not as much. This one creates a much darker shadow, which is not real. So it's one of the reasons to use this particular glass shader. And what I've done is I've actually looked at all these other, I've looked at a lot of different shaders in here and tried to maximize performance for both Eevee and Cycles as well as reality, right? And another one is this glass window, which is kind of good for architectural scenes. And then there's some other old ones that we have been looking around, and these people, there's some, Eric Klein had some, there were some other ones out there, so I threw them in there. But I think this universal one is the one, they're really the one to focus on. Okay, let's keep going. So then there's these IK other, and so these are, let's do a concrete. So these are special materials that I actually captured at IKEA and have fine-tuned so that they kind of work. They're just, there's not a lot to them other than maybe you can adjust kind of the darkness and brightness of them. You can, if you want to adjust the roughness, you've got this kind of slider right here. You can, do that, make them more rough, or go the opposite direction and make the contrast higher so that they get to be a little more reflective. You've got bump maps on there and everything. So the point being is that, they work both in Eevee and in Cycles. You may find some pretty good materials in here. Some carpets, some tile, leather. Here's a stone one, Let's keep going. So these are from the original Eevees, but they've been tweaked a little bit, but there's some pretty good ones in here, like the steel distress. That's, that's all about this one texture to roll all. So it's a pretty easy one to change up if you want. Here's steel, there's steel. So that shows you little scratches on it and everything. So these are really good for, especially for industrial design or product renderings and stuff like that. They work great. And all of these are accurate. The gold, gold shiny, it's an accurate PBR setting for these. So they're all exactly as you would expect them to be. That's the metal. And then you go into, the CW. Go to plastic paint. These are using Mold-Tech patterns. So when you look at them, you can see that the pattern is a really good plastic pattern. You can adjust the scale of that in here, of course. Just come in here and type in something like, 7, maybe to make it a little finer if you want. But and then they also have a bevel setting as well. So when you go into Eevee, you're going to get that same pattern. Keep in mind, Cycles doesn't show bumps as much, so sometimes you maybe need to bump, jack up the bump a little bit more. So the strength, instead of 0.1, you might say, 0.4 or something like that, and that'll give you a little stronger texture there, as you can tell. And then if we look at those, you've got a lot of different plastics in here as well. There's different, each one has different textures on it. Stone is as another one of these, that one of the legacy materials, and they work again. You don't need to texture map anything, but they work just fine. And you can of course adjust roughness. If you want to add the roughness a little bit more, you can make it rougher. So you can adjust all that in these. And they've been again optimized so that they work great inside of Cycles as well. So, and the cw-Tech, this has stuff like let's look at carbon fiber X. We'll just add that on there. So you can see this has got, carbon fiber. Let's just go ahead and adjust that a little bit so you can kind of get an idea, but that's carbon fiber. And, again, Eevee, they both look pretty good. There's a bunch of different ones in here. One of the ones I like is the Pirelli dots. I've always liked that one quite a bit. And another one I like is this brand new hologram one, right? So you could add that material as well. And it doesn't really work in Eevee, but if you put it in Cycles, it'll give you some interesting effects. So you can get an idea of just kind of a hologram sitting there. So that's in the Tech one. Let's keep on going. Wood, you've probably seen some of these. This is a plywood material. Let's go back in Eevee, you can see it. Again, it'll work in both Eevee and Cycles, and in Cycles it's got a little bevel in it. If you want to see, you can kind of look up, adjust the roughness amount, and make it, varnished. There's just a bunch of woods in here. So let's talk about a couple of these other special ones. So first one I'll go into is this. Well, before I do that, let's talk about cw-Other. Other's just got a random sampling of things. Like if you want to add a checkerboard to it, you can do that. There's a scale right there, so you can just adjust that all you want. And there are the colors you could adjust. So if you want to make it a different color, you can do that. There's a carpet. There's blink emissive. This will actually blink in an animation. The light will actually start blinking. You can choose what color you want. I'm not going to run it right now, but you get an idea. Let's go ahead and look at random colors. That just allows that you have a random color assigned based on the location of the object. So there's another one. There's another one. You get the idea. Sometimes it's nice to be able to show things in random colors. We have some fabric in here, grime. There's some different color grimes in here, and they're always nice. Sometimes it's nice just to throw some grime on an area. It's a real simple texture all in one, but it works really well. And there's different colors of grime. And let's see what else we have in here. We have a UV material. So if you want to, look and see how the UVs and textile densities are, this is a good one for that. We have rubber in here. There's rubber. And there's also plaster and sheetrock for inside. There's like a plaster. Transfer trace. So I only use this as I'm trying to trace over an image, and I want the image below, and I want to draw on top of it, and that's what that's for. Let me show you another one. This is the CW Multi. This is kind of interesting. So let's just grab this multi-stucco and add that material. And what's kind of cool about this is you can actually see that it breaks out inside. You get these cutouts, and I can actually go into. Again, we can go in and see these same things, cycles. Here's where you adjust everything. Here's the mask. The mask is this part that is, separating the two materials. Here's the top material and the bottom material. These are just different images you want to use for them. Here's how you mix them. There's, you can mask, the bump. You just play around with these. I think I might have a video on that. See if I can dig it up and share it. But that's what that does. And these are kind of, there's just, the same thing. Here's a dirty metal material using a mask. Also, two different metal images with a mask on it. So there's just some different ways of using that, and wood as well as some other things. So that's the multi. And this Tri-Planar. Now, this Tri-Planar is really interesting. Let me explain this one to you. So I'm going to add that material, and actually, let's do this wooden one. So if you look at this, you say, okay, that's cool, but I want these going this way, and I want this going the other way, right? So let's just go back in cycles. You want to change the direction of those. Well, you can't really do that easily in the node editor, and that's why I created this Tri-Planar material. And you can change the texture image just here, but then you go in here and basically you can adjust the scale, make it bigger or smaller. And then you can adjust the rotation, 0. So you make it 0. Now we've got, them going all this completely different direction. And that's a real hard thing to do, right? I mean, to be able to generate that. And then we have roughness. And then we have also, you can offset it. So if you're trying to move things in the Y and the X, and of course in the Z, you can do that as well. So it's a really nice way of creating a tileable material. Now, the other thing it does that's really interesting is that, and I'll share a video on this, but you don't need to use a tileable material for this. It'll actually figure out how to tile the material. It'll swap them around back to front. So for instance, if I look at this, I'll tab into here, right? This is this 309 JPEG, right? So let's just go in here and look at what that looks like. So I'll go in here, image editor. So this is the image, and you can see this is not a tileable image. It's not set up to be tileable at all, and yet it does tile correctly. And that's one of the big selling points for this particular texture. So, and of course you can, also, let's grab this. You could also come in here and just use this curves to darken things up and adjust them and everything how you want them. So, and then there's roughness settings and bump settings. It's a really well put together material. And one of the things you might ask is, why don't I put all these things up here in an add-on? Well, it's because there's already a ton of add-ons look at all my add-ons. And that's just this grouping of add-ons. There's lots more, right? So I'm using simple tabs to shorten all this stuff. I got to tell you that you know, I don't want to do more add-ons. I want to minimize my add-ons. I like the idea of being able to just go in directly and mess with the actual material in here. And because these things are typically set out with colored backgrounds for the nodes that you want to adjust, it works really well. So that's the quick and dirty pass-through of these brand new materials. These are ones that I use all the time and I think are important, at least ones from a designer's perspective. They are all based on photographic images, and most of them are my images. There are a couple of them that aren't, but this is a very different workflow than just going off and buying an add-on that can just throw a bunch of PBR textures on your model. Extremely different because a lot of times you need customized versions of things. Hopefully it's something that you may be interested in taking a look at. As I mentioned, it's a free upgrade for existing users. If not, jump over to Blender Market or Gumroad and grab yourself a copy. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you online.